Hi there, I'm the _twig, and I like analysing game rules. There are very few things more fun than punching someone in the face. This is a known fact. Unfortunately, until recently, the game Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition did not replicate this. Punching people in the face was frankly just not very good. We now have new rules though, and my god did they make punching people in the face a lot better. There's a lot to cover in this video, so let's get started immediately by looking at the Unarmed Strike. Right, there's a lot of words there, but essentially the Unarmed Strike now has 3 sub-features. And whenever you make an Unarmed Strike, you can choose one of them. Either do damage, grapple, or shove. If you do damage, then you make a strength-based attack roll and do damage equal to 1 plus your strength. That's the same as in 2014. But if you choose to grapple or shove, then instead, a target which is no more than one size larger than you makes either a strength or dexterity saving throw, or becomes either grappled or prone, or is moved 5 feet away from you. The enemy always gets to choose their saving throw, and the DC is based on your strength. Normally, if you choose to do a shove or a grapple, you do no damage, but there are ways around this which we'll talk about later. From just this, the Unarmed Strike still doesn't seem that great. In fact, functionally there's not really any change there other than grapples and shoves now being saving throws instead of ability checks, as you could already do one of these anytime you made the attack action. The movement of these 2 features into the Unarmed Strike though are actually massive, and mean that absolutely everyone, even the wizard, now has a reason to make an Unarmed Strike from time to time. The first half of this video will be split into 3 sections: the Grappled and Prone conditions, the Monk and the Dance Bard, and Feats. And then for the second half we'll be going through actual combos and tactics that you can use, such as dropping people, opportunity attacks, and in particular a somewhat controversial tactic called Rugby. Now, I can't say that I'm a massive fan of rugby. I'm typically more interested in winter sports like ice hockey and curling, but I'm even more interested in these guys who support me on Patreon. They got to see this video early, and some of them got to listen to an audio-only version about 2, maybe 3 weeks ago, depending on how long editing took. In particular, SK and Mark Rainbow are especially commendable because they recently discovered the cure for cancer and HIV, and also how to make insulin free in the United States of America. So then, let's have a look at the Grappled and Prone conditions. I'm actually going to start with Prone because it's the simpler one. As a reminder, you can force someone prone by choosing the shove option of the Unarmed Strike, forcing them to make a strength or dexterity save against a DC based on your strength, although you can only do that if they're no more than one size larger than you. Other than that, the prone condition is essentially unchanged from 2014. You can only move by crawling, which requires double movement, you have disadvantage on attack rolls, and enemies have advantage on attack rolls whilst within 5 feet, but disadvantage otherwise. The only way out of prone is to spend movement equal to half of your speed, and importantly that is speed with a capital S, meaning your walking speed. If you have the fly spell cast on you, giving you a 30-foot walk speed and a 60-foot fly speed, you only have to spend 15 feet to stand up, because that's half of 30. Standing up is also half of your current walk speed. If your normal walk speed is 30 feet, but you get hit by a ray of frost and the slow weapon mastery, dropping you down to 10 feet, you now only need to spend 5 feet of movement, because that's half of 10. Another important part of the prone condition is that it makes flying creatures fall out of the air, unless they have the hover feature. Unfortunately that's not especially useful for unarmed strikes unless you have some way to reach the flying creature, just because unarmed strikes typically only have a range of 5 feet. But the more interesting condition is Grappled, which has seen a big change since 2014. Again, it's the same saving throw as for shoving prone, but you can only grapple if you have a free hand. You don't need a free hand for shoving. I'll start with escaping a grapple. Whilst grappled, you need to spend an action to make an athletics or acrobatics skill check against the same DC as the original saving throw. That's the first big benefit to Grappled. It wastes actions. You can also escape if the enemy is incapacitated, for example by dying or failing against Tasha's Hideous Laughter, or if you are somehow pushed away from each other. Super sneaky tip. This is actually how you escape from a grapple without using your full action. Rather than using your action to try and make a skill check, you can try and shove your grappler. That means that they will make a saving throw instead, but if they fail, then they get pushed away from you, breaking the grapple. This only uses one attack, and if you've got extra attack, you can actually make multiple attempts. In some circumstances, that might actually be slightly better than trying to escape the normal way, even though each individual attempt is probably less likely to succeed. Now, for the actual effects of Grappled, first up, all your speeds go to 0, so you can't move. By the way, if you can't move, you also can't stand up from the prone condition. The Grappler also has the option to move you, although they need to spend double movement to do that. And really interestingly, you now have disadvantage on attacks against everyone except your Grappler. This one is really important. Historically, there have been a few subclasses like the Ancestral Guardian Barbarian and the Cavalier Fighter, which have had a sort of taunt effect, effectively giving an enemy disadvantage to attack anyone except themselves. Well, now everyone has that feature. If the wizard is down to 3 HP, you can grapple the orc standing next to her, essentially giving the wizard a free dodge action. The final point about both shove and grapple, as I said, you can't do them if the target is more than one size larger than you. That means that finding a way to increase your size is a very good idea. The easiest way is probably the Goliath, who can become large once per day, or you could have your wizard friend cast Enlarge on you, or maybe stockpile potions of growth using the new Tasha's Bubbling Cauldron spell. You could even combine these to get to huge. So, those are the conditions. Let's now have a look at some classes, and I am of course talking primarily about the monk. Monks obviously get a bunch of features to make Unarmed Strikes better, starting right from first level. Martial Arts lets you use your dexterity instead of strength for attack and damage rolls, and also lets you base your shove and grapple DCs on your dexterity as well. They then also let you make an Unarmed Strike for free at any time using a bonus action. In 2014, they used to require you to take the attack action first, but that's no longer the case, and it makes it so much better. Let's say for example that you wanted to both punch someone and dodge. In 2014, you'd need to take the attack action and then spend a key point to use patient defense. Now though, you can just take the dodge action and then use martial arts to punch as a bonus action. It's the same result, but now it's free. Martial arts also means that you can do a grapple or a shove as a bonus action. Maybe you wanted to shove someone prone and then grapple them. You had to have the extra attack feature to do that before, but now you can do it right from first level. This also makes the monk an incredible one-level dip on any melee character who doesn't mind not wearing armour, like a ranger or a moon druid, since you get a bonus action attack with no feat investment. The final thing that martial arts does for your unarmed strikes is it gives you an actual dice to roll instead of just doing 1 damage. There's a bunch of other unarmed strike enhancements in the monk, like Flurry of Blows and Stunning Strike, but they basically just do what they say on the tin, and this isn't a video about the monk specifically. It's a video about unarmed strikes, so I'm not going to read out the entire class to you. All you need to know for the purposes of this video are the monk gets to use dexterity and can do a bonus action unarmed strike with no resources or prerequisites required other than not wearing armour. The Dance Bard can do something very similar, although they instead get to do a free unarmed strike whenever they use their bardic inspiration, and they only get to use dexterity for the attack and damage rolls. Their save DCs are still strength based. As such, I consider this more to just be a damage bonus, rather than something that you can use to get many of this video's tactical benefits out of, unless you just happen to be building a strength-based Dance Bard. Now that we know how we're making our unarmed strikes, let's have a look at some feats that improve them. There are essentially 3. Tavern Brawler is an origin feat, Unarmed Fighting is a fighting style, and Grappler is a general feat. So you could technically get them all by 4th level, although I don't think that that's especially advisable. Starting with Tavern Brawler, the enhanced unarmed strikes and improvised weaponry points are essentially worthless on a character who is planning on doing unarmed strikes a lot, so that leaves damage rerolls and push. Damage rerolls lets you reroll if you get a 1 on your damage, and that is worth approximately 0.45-ish damage per hit, or about 0.27-ish damage per attack. It varies a bit depending on your damage die. I tried a few things, and the absolute best that I could get out of this was plus 2 DPR on a level 20 monk. That is essentially nothing, and means that this feat is entirely riding on that last point, push. This one says that when you hit with an unarmed strike as part of the attack action, you can both deal damage and push 5 feet. That push doesn't actually have a saving throw on it either. Now, there's a few things to talk about here. First, it is specifically pushing 5 feet, you can't shove them prone. Fighter could also use a weapon like a Warhammer with the push mastery to push 10 feet. Second, this specifies the attack action. If you use martial arts to make a bonus action attack, or something like an opportunity attack, you don't get this push. The main use case here is to push an enemy away as a pseudo disengage, so you can run away without triggering opportunity attacks. The thing is that if you're a monk, the open hand and element subclasses already have a push built in, although they do require a saving throw. And the shadow has darkness, so it's mostly immune to opportunity attacks unless the creature has blind sight or something. I have to say that I really don't think this is a great feat. The push is fine, but you can get so much more out of a mastery, and yes, monks can use a great club to get push if they get access to masteries in some other way. There is, however, a really cool combo that uses Tavern Brawl, which I'll be covering in a bit. The next one is the fighting style, Unarmed Fighting. As a fighting style, you need to be a fighter, paladin, or ranger to get access to it. This one gives you a bit more damage on your unarmed strikes. Given that you could multiclass into monk for this, that's only really useful on characters who want to punch whilst wearing armour, or don't meet the multiclassing prerequisites. It does also let you do 1d4 at the start of each of your turns if you're grappling someone, but that's a really tiny amount. I honestly can't find a really good use for this. The good one though is Grappler. This one is really nice. First up, like all general feats, it gives you a +1, in this case to either strength or dexterity, and then 3 other features. You get advantage to hit anyone you're grappling, that is a really good damage boost. You get to drag people without spending extra movement unless they are larger than you, we'll be coming back to that later, but for now it's really useful. And finally, once per turn when you hit an unarmed strike as part of the attack action, you can both deal damage and attempt to grapple. Now there is one thing that I need to make clear here. It specifies that you need to hit. That means that you must land an attack roll with the damage option, and only then can you force the grapple saving throw. If you miss your attack, you don't get to grapple. Also, like the Tavern Brawler push, punch and grab specifies attack action. You can't do this with your martial arts, flurry of blows, or opportunity attacks. Despite that, Grappler is fantastic. The ability to just freely get one grapple attempt each turn while still doing damage is incredibly useful. And since it gives you advantage against grappled enemies, it's a pretty sizable damage bump. Right then, that is all of the basic mechanics out of the way, so let's look at some tactics. And I want to start off with one of my favourites, opportunity attacks. I've already made a video covering some of the new stuff that you can do with opportunity attacks, but I have more to say here regarding unarmed strikes, because opportunity attacks are just so much better now. We'll start off with this scenario. You're playing the fighter, and this gnoll wants to run to the back line so they can attack your wizard friend. That means that they're going to trigger an opportunity attack from you. Normally you just attack with your greatsword, but instead you can use an unarmed strike and pick the grapple option. That stops the gnoll in their tracks because they now have 0 speed. You just completely saved your wizard friend. You couldn't do this before, a grapple had to be made as part of the attack action in 2014, but now that it's under the unarmed strike, essentially everyone has a pseudo sentinel feat. If your hands are full, you could instead shove the gnoll prone to at least use up half of its movement, meaning that it couldn't reach the wizard in this scenario. Next scenario, and in this one we're playing the wizard. The gnoll is going to run away again, maybe because it's retreating, and this will trigger an opportunity attack from both you and the fighter. We'll say that the gnoll has 5 HP left. That's the fighter's minimum damage roll with their maul and +3 strength. The only impact that you can have on this kill is if the fighter misses their attack, you hit, and then you max roll your quarterstaff damage. That's very unlikely to occur, it's only about 2%. Overall, this gives the two of you around a 57% chance to kill the gnoll. Instead of attacking with the quarterstaff though, you could attempt to shove the gnoll prone. If the gnoll fails, your fighter now has advantage on their opportunity attack, so it is much more likely to hit. If you shove instead of attack, the chance to kill goes up to 62%. By giving the fighter advantage instead of just attempting another attack, you increase your chance to kill by 5%. That's a +1 weapon right there. The impact of this actually increases the more HP the gnoll has. Again, this is brand new to 2024. Our third scenario involves a really cool change to the opportunity attack rule. In 2014 you had to make an opportunity attack against a hostile creature, but now you can make an opportunity attack against anyone. Again, you're the wizard and your friend is the fighter. It's the fighter's turn and they want to run up and hit the gnoll, but they're 35 feet away, they can't quite reach. Instead of dashing or dodging or wasting their action surge, they can step next to you, step away, trigger an opportunity attack, and you can shove them 5 feet, effectively giving the fighter a small movement boost and helping them get in range and attack. You exchange your reaction to give the fighter a full attack action, and use whatever masteries they had. You don't even need to roll the save, because the fighter can now just choose to fail. Opportunity attacks in 2024 are absolutely awesome. There's so many things that you can do with them. After all of that, let's look at something which is unique to the Elements Monk, although warning, this one does go into Ask Your DM territory. I call this one the Disjointed Hitbox Grapple. Anyone ever played Samus in Smash? Elements gets a really cool feature at 3rd level called Elemental Attunement, and amongst other things, this gives you plus 10 feet reach with your Unarmed Strikes. What you can do with this is attempt to grapple someone 15 feet away from you. If you land the grapple, their speed drops to 0, so now they just have to stand there in the middle of the fight, and unless they have a ranged attack, they can't contribute at all until they escape the grapple. Now, as for why this isn't Ask Your DM, the grappling rules say that the grapple ends if the distance between the grappled target and the grappler exceeds the grapple's range. The question is, what does the grapple's range mean? When you made the grapple, the range was 15 feet, but Elemental Attunement only increases your reach when you make an unarmed strike. After you've finished your attack, your reach goes back down to 5 feet. Is the grapple's range your reach when you made the grapple, or your reach now? There's an argument either way, although I personally read it as the grapple's range being the range when the grapple was made, meaning that you can grapple someone 15 feet away. That reading also does seem to be supported by an article written on D&D Beyond, although I will point out that this was written by the marketing team, not the design team. Our next tactic is the drop. So earlier I mentioned that there was this cool tactic with Tavern Brawler. This is it. What you want to do is pick up Tavern Brawler and Crusher. Once per turn, when you hit with an unarmed strike as part of the attack action, you can activate Crusher, pushing the target 5 feet directly upwards, and then Tavern Brawler pushing them 5 feet diagonally up and away. The enemy is now 10 feet up in the air and will fall, taking an extra 1d6 damage and falling prone. There is no saving throw involved at all. You can do this automatically every single turn. You can also do something similar to this as an open hand or Elements Monk, although these features do require a saving throw, and as you only get the verticality of Crusher once per turn, they are somewhat unreliable. When you get to Elements 11 though, you can fly, so instead of pushing people up, you can pull them up, allowing you to drop people up to 5 times per turn. There is maybe something that you can do here with Druid as well. If you wild shape into something with a burrow speed, like a giant badger, you can dig down and maybe make an unarmed strike from below your enemy to push them upwards. That one probably needs DM approval though, as you would technically be trying to attack from underground. Okay, onto our final tactic, Rugby. I've also heard people call this one Buzzsaw and also Football. I assume the American variety where you wear armour so you don't get hurt, you use your hands not your feet, and you get advertised to. So this tactic uses the new rules for spells with emanation effects, such as Spirit Guardians. These now say that they force a saving throw whenever the emanation enters a creature's space. What this means is that the cleric or whoever could just throw out their emanation spell and run around the battlefield, triggering Spirit Guardians on each hag for an essentially 3d8 on all of them. So where do unarmed strikes come in? Well, we're going to be making an unarmed strike against our own cleric, choose the grapple option, and then drag them around. That means that the Spirit Guardians enters the hag's spaces again, so they each take another 3d8. Unfortunately, while dragging people we have to spend double movement, so we can't reach this third hag. Unless that is, we have the grappler feat, in which case we don't have to spend double movement, we can move our full speed. This is very similar to the old cheese grater tactic, where you would drag an enemy across spike growth, doing 2d4 for every space you move, but it's arguably even more powerful. Let's say that now we're a 9th level party, and we've got a cleric with Spirit Guardians for 5d8 damage, a druid with Conjure Woodland Beings for 16 damage, and we're playing a monk with Grappler. On each of the casters' turns, they'll cast their spells and then run around. Then on your turn, you'll use Flurry of Blows, grabbing both of your casters, and run around again, triggering each of their spells a second time. For your action, you'll then ready a dash for the next turn. That turn ticks over, and your ready dash lets you run around a third time, triggering each of those spells a third time. In total, that's 33d8 save for half every single turn. Possibly more if the hags decide to enter or end in the emanations. In total, assuming you have 50-50 on the saving throws, your monk contributes 73.75 damage per round at 9th level. That's almost 3 times a 2014 crossbow expert fighter, and over 50% more than what a 2024 Berserker Barbarian would be expected to do. With these tactics, especially the Disjointed Hitbox and Rugby, please make sure that your DM is okay with them. Since these both involve grappling, there's also one last piece of weird technical stuff that I want to close on. In the PHP there's this table showing the carry and drag capacity of different sized creatures. Of particular interest to us is the column about dragging. For a small or medium creature, we can drag up to 30 times our strength, and if we exceed this, then our walk speed drops to 5 feet. As a monk with 8 strength, we can drag up to 240 pounds. If our cleric friend is wearing heavy armour and has a weapon and a shield and maybe a backpack with a bedroll and an iron pot for cooking, we might not be able to drag them. Personally though, I would ignore this rule with regards to grappling. It seems to me that this has already been accounted for and abstracted into the restrictions on grappling creatures more than one size larger than you. But of course, I'm not your DM. They might want to use these carrying capacity rules. Right, that should be pretty much everything there is to know about Unarmed Strikes in D&D 2024. If you enjoyed this deep dive, I made another one about dual wielding and the light weapon property, which honestly goes even deeper. Why not give that a shot? Remember to subscribe so you get notified whenever I bring out more stuff, and why not share this video with your friends so they have some tricks up their sleeve when they roll up a monk. Bye!